Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to our lesson from Bad Boy by Walter Dean Myers. This is a memoir. Now, we've run across memoirs before when we read Brown Girl Dreaming, and that one was unique because it was written in stanzas or it was poetry. This is a typical memoir where it's written in paragraph form. Now, remember, a memoir is written in first person and it is a memory from the author's life. This is our introduction lesson for this new story. So, our essential question for this unit is what are some of the challenges and triumphs of growing up? We've been reading about all different kinds of challenges that our authors have faced in our previous stories. And, this story is no different. He has some challenges that he faces. So when you're reading from Bad Boy, I want you to keep these questions in mind and how you would feel if you were faced with these challenges. So the first question is, what expectations does society or the world have for me based on my age, my gender, my race, and other aspects of my identity? And then I also want you to think about how you feel about those expectations. So this is our author, Walter Dean Myers. You can find this on page 60 of your My Perspectives book. Walter Dean Myers was born in 1937 and he died in 2014. And by the age of 5 was reading daily newspapers. That's kind of crazy. 5 years old. A lot of kids at 5 years old are barely reading. Yet he was reading newspapers. And despite this impressive start with words, Myers didn't think he was going to be a writer for the rest of his career. But in his 20s, he won a writing contest and he went on to find success as an author of young adult books. Myers often wrote about his African American heritage and his life growing up in Harlem, which is a part of New York City. So, since this is a memoir, let's look at the background information about the memories from Walter Dean Myers' life that are the basis for this story. And you can find this background paragraph on page 61 in your My Perspectives book. So, Walter Dean Myers describes his childhood growing up in Harlem, New York in the 1940s and 1950s. This excerpt from Bad Boy takes place when Myers is in elementary school. Earlier in the chapter, his teacher, Mrs. Conway, had lent him books to read after noticing his interest in reading. So if you haven't already opened your My Perspectives book, I would like you to now and turn to page 60. This is our concept vocabulary page. And as you're reading from Bad Boy, you're going to encounter these 3 words on this page. And the first one is respected. The next one is desperate. And the third one is disgusted. So we want you to focus on context clues if you don't know what they mean to find the meaning of these unfamiliar words. So you're going to look for other words or phrases that appear nearby in the text. And there are various types of context clues that can help you read. So let's look at the first example that they give us here. Marcus hid the trove of baseball cards he'd collected for many years under his bed. Trove is the word they want us to try and figure out what it means. So I know he's doing something with baseball cards. He's hiding them and he's collected them for a long time, many years. That's a long time. And he hid them under his bed. So the conclusion I can make by using these underlined words or phrases is that I know Marcus collected baseball cards for many years and he hid them. So perhaps trove means that it's a valuable hidden collection. Now, when you're reading, always, whether it's in your My Perspectives book or your independent reading book, you should be applying your knowledge of context clues and other vocabulary strategies to determine meanings of unfamiliar words you encounter when you read. This is your vocabulary worksheet that you're going to be working on. And for part A, you're going to read the sentence and you're going to think about the meaning of the italicized word and then answer the question. So let's look at number 1. It's done for us. If the mayor of a town is respected by residents, what do the residents think of him or her? So if you're respected, people usually think highly of you. They look up to you. So you're going to do number 2 and number 3 in the same manner. You're going to read the sentence or question, and then you're going to explain again on number 3 as well. Then in part B, we're going to be focusing on the Latin root spec. We're going to have a future lesson on this, but spec means to look or see. So for instance, the word introspect. See, there's that root word spect in there. And then we have the prefix intro. So introspect means to look inward. The following words contain the Latin root spec. You are going to write a brief definition for each word and then use each word in a sentence. And if you don't know the word, that's okay. Just look them up in a dictionary or you can Google them. Let's look at number 1. Spectacle is the word. That means that you're drawing attention to yourself or you make yourself look silly. And then the sentence that you could write is, I made a spectacle of myself at the park today. You're going to do the same thing for spectacular, speculate, and spectator. So now we're going to go to page 66 in your My Perspectives book, and this is our Analyzing Craft and Structure page. This is the other skill besides using context clues that we're going to focus on. And the skill today for this lesson is the central idea. So the central idea is the main message or idea expressed in nonfiction text. Typically, you would hear us say main idea. Main idea is for literature, fiction writing. When you're talking about nonfiction text, it is called central idea. So the central idea is always related to the author's purpose or the reason that the author writes a text. In most essays, the author states the central idea directly. They say it right out. It's right there for you. There's no guessing. However, in narrative nonfiction, such as memoir, the author suggests the central idea through details. So it is indirectly written in the text. And to identify the central idea, readers need to examine the details in the text and then decide what they think the central idea is. So in the excerpt from Bad Boy, the central idea is that society wrongly expects boys to act in a certain way. Now, you can use an author's word choice to help you determine his or her point of view about a subject, and that will help you focus on those details, which will help you find the central idea if you don't know it. Or it will help you focus on finding those details that support the central idea. So you have some central idea worksheets to do. The first one here, you have the explanation up at the top of what central idea is. And it talks about the central idea often being stated directly, meaning it's right there for you. For example, you can't judge a book by its cover, but it can also be expressed indirectly, meaning that it's implied or suggested. So you have to use details to figure out what the central idea is. So when you're trying to identify a central idea, you want to ask yourself questions such as the following. What does the author want me to learn? What is the author's main point? Or who or what does the author talk about mostly? An author's purpose is his or her reason for writing something, and that can often help you find the central idea. So you're going to read this passage below and answer the 3 questions below about the central idea. So the first question is, what is the central idea in the story? Number 2, is the central idea directly or indirectly expressed? and then explain. So is it right there for you, or do you have to figure it out? And then which words in the passage help you identify the essential idea? What are the details? The next worksheet that you're going to do, in part A, you're going to read each of the passages and you're going to put a D on the line for a directly expressed central idea, or an I on the line for an indirectly expressed central idea. So let's look at number 1. A small crowd assembled, waiting to see if I'd met my goal of teaching myself to dunk the basketball before the end of summer. As my hand seized the rim of the basket and the ball fell in the hoop, the crowd gasped in amazement. Sometimes it takes a lot of hard work to meet your goals, but the payoff is totally worth it. So you have to ask yourself, what is the author trying to teach me? What am I supposed to be learning? And if you can find the answer to those questions, that's a directly expressed central idea, which is what number 1 is. You would write a D on the line because they're stating the central idea right in the last sentence. Sometimes it takes a lot of hard work to meet your goals, but the payoff is totally worth it. So you're going to read number 2 and 3 and decide if it's directly stated or indirectly stated for the central idea. Then in part B, again, you're going to have a short little passage to read, and then you need to answer 3 questions. The first question is, what is the central idea of the story? The second is, what is the central idea directly or indirectly expressed? And then number 3 is, which words in the passage helped you identify the central idea? So what were the details that helped you figure out what number 1 was? So now finally, you're getting ready to do your first read after we move past this lesson. So when you're doing your first read, we want you to apply these strategies. The first thing that we want you to do is we want you to notice the general ideas about the text. What is it about? Who is involved? Notice the expectations or rules for behavior that the narrator feels are imposed by those around him. Then we want you to connect ideas within that selection to what you already know or what you already have read. For example, compare the expectations imposed on the narrator to those imposed on you. Now, when you get ready to do your second read or your close reading, you want to annotate. This is where you're marking vocabulary and key passages you want to revisit. You're circling, you're underlining, you're writing notes in the side. You want to mark key details such as how the narrator feels. And then finally, you're going to respond. Maybe write a brief summary of the selection in the margin. How does it help you understand Walter Dean Myers better and what he experienced?